Hello and welcome, I'm Sebastian and I make travel videos. But today, let's talk about this guy, the Mavic Air 2. Before we start this video, one thing that I wanted to mention very quickly. If you want to see photos or videos, raw footage from this drone and you want to see it for yourself on your own computer, you can find the link down below for my website, and there you will actually be able to download free footage from this drone, all the photos, all the videos that you might need, all of the different settings, and you can see it for yourself how it looks like on your computer. So if you want the free samples, like I said, down below it's gonna be a link to my website where you can find it all. So first off, let's talk about the specs, and first off you'll see that we have a new controller. Thanks to this controller we actually get a bigger range. It is now not working anymore. The Air series is now actually on the OcuSync. We get up to 10 kilometers range. My guess is to do with this controller, and let's talk about it for a second. Not only is it a little bit bigger, and it's something that I said is gonna be worse, well, I cannot say that anymore. To be honest, there is no going back to the old controller. I feel like this is the way to go. It kind of feels like playing a video game when you have it in your hand. It feels like a gaming controller, even from the ergonomics. You have the sticks hidden inside where you can scroll in here. You have all the settings on the front, like the return to home and all that stuff. You also have the things up here. And the very cool thing is the phone actually goes on the top right now, because you can actually put your phone inside here. Thanks to this, you're actually looking at the top of the controller, not the bottom. It kind of feels like playing a video game. Right now we're actually looking at the screen and kind of feeling like you're playing a video game. You know, you have the screen here, playing the video game. That's how you feel when flying. It feels much more responsive, much more better thanks to that. And the antennas are right here, if you're curious where they are right now. That's gonna be it for the controller. I think it's a very good controller, and it's something you have to actually feel in your hand to get what I'm talking about, but it is much better. It's a huge upgrade in my opinion, even though it's gonna be a little bit bigger than the normal controller, but I love it. I fell in love with this from the very get-go when I got it in my hand. For the specs for the drone, well, you have the obstacle avoidance system sensors on the front, the back, and on the bottom, like normally, it is standard for now. There is no obstacle avoidance from the top, so you have to actually remember to look up above you and to the sides. What about the camera? The camera is a 48 megapixel. It's a bigger sensor than the Mavic Pro 1, which I used to use, or the Mavic Air 1. Not only you get more range out of this drone, you actually get a bigger sensor. And let's open this. As you can see, it even says on here it's a 48 megapixel. It is actually 48 megapixel sensor on the drone. It's actually a technology used in smartphone called pixel binning. So basically you can take photos up to 48 megapixels or 12 megapixels depending on the situation you might need it. The gimbal is much more sturdy than what I'm used to with the Mavic Pro, and that is a good thing because I now feel a little bit more comfortable. Different specs, well, let's go for a second back to this side, is the battery. The batteries now are the record in terms of the flight time. Supposedly 34 minutes, but in reality, let's be honest, it's gonna be more like 28, 27 minutes, which is still gonna be a lot because we know that always the battery is a little bit less than advertised because of the wind conditions or the place you're flying in, but it's still the best of the Mavic series. Going back to the camera, we have 4K 60 frames per second at 120 megabits per second. Not only that, we actually get 240 frames per second in full HD. Just imagine the slow motion you can get with this drone. There's also things like the 4K 30 frames per second HDR, but we're gonna talk about this in a second. So let's talk about the physical of this drone. One thing is, it is very light, and I really like it because it is much smaller, and in a lot of countries, especially in Europe, it is actually below the limit that you can fly. So it's a very nice thing that you have the peace of mind flying a smaller and lighter aircraft. It is not only smaller than the Mavic Pro that I'm used to, or the Mavic Pro 2, it is also lighter, and from a feeling of it, it feels very sturdy. Even the gimbal feels very sturdy. So the main thing that you're probably wondering about is like, how are the photos, how are the videos? Coming from a Mavic Pro 1 where the photos weren't that good, they kind of felt like a smartphone, a medium range smartphone flying in the air pretty much. Well, now I actually can say that I will be taking a lot of more photos, and I'm sure I'm gonna use a lot of them for thumbnails and for Instagram, social media, because they're really good. For the photo side, you get both JPEG and RAW, so you can actually edit your photos the way you want it to be. The first option you will get is the single, basically a 12 megapixel photo. Second option you get is the 48 megapixel, and it is using the technology of pixel binning, and I'm not gonna go into it, but basically it's a different technology to combine pixels to make something more out of this sensor, which by the way is bigger than the Mavic Pro 1 and Mavic Air 1. The 48 megapixel, well, I would only advise you to use it in very nicely lit situations, because other than that, you might find that this single is gonna be better, or the smart that we're gonna talk in a second. Why? Well, the 48 megapixel is gonna gather a little bit less light from what it seems, and thanks to this, I would rather get a little bit more light than extra resolution, because if we get less light, we're gonna get more ISO, which in turn is gonna get more grainy. So in a very nicely lit situation, it's gonna look perfectly fine. If it's a little bit darker, I would change to the smart photo. Now, what is smart photo? Basically, smart photos are the drone thinking by itself and doing the best quality photo it can in that situation. Very good in terms of like the low light shots. So if you're into that kind of stuff, I would highly advise you to use the smart photos. You also get the burst, and I think it's very cool for someone that likes action. If you're chasing a boat, someone is on the bike, jumping around, and you can get like burst photos. It's very cool. Something a little bit, maybe not for everybody, but it's actually there, so it's very cool. And you also get the panoramas. You get all of the different panoramas, like normal side to side. You actually get the vertical one, which is very cool. And you can actually take a vertical photo thanks to that, even though the gimbal cannot actually turn physically vertical. And also you get like the wide angle. If you cannot back up anymore, you can actually use the panorama of the wide, and it's gonna be taking more photos and making it look wide angle. It's very cool. Or the full 360-degree angle is just very cool. Very cool to try it out, even if you're not gonna use all of them all the time. As for the video side, it is actually very exciting. One of the things that this sensor can actually do, both for photo and video, is better dynamic range. You can actually see it from the get-go. Once I got this drone in the air, right away, in a couple seconds, I noticed one thing. No longer I had perfectly exposed ground, but just white skyline. Now you can actually see that it's perfectly exposed on the ground, as well as the sky, the clouds, everything was perfectly exposed. And that is very beautiful because it looks that much better. In terms of the video, as like the specifications, 4K 60 frames per second at 120 megabits per second. Thanks to this, you get very crispy, very good looking 4K footage. And it's some of the best I have seen on a drone. And it is very cool because even like Mavic Pro 2 doesn't have 4K 60 frames per second. So it's a very big plus for this drone, and I think I'm gonna be using that so much. You can actually slow down the clips by 50% if you're using 30 frames per second timeline, or even more if you're using like 25 frames per second timeline. So it's gonna be very cool to actually use it in the field. But if you need a little bit more slow motion, maybe you're doing like an action shot, maybe you're flying through something, well, you have 240 frames per second in full HD. And it's very cool to have that if you actually need that slow motion. I cannot wait to actually use it with maybe like, you know, a beach where the water hits the beach, or like the rocks. That will be definitely something I'm looking forward to because it might be very good. You also get the 4K 30 frames per second HDR. And it's a bit of a hit and miss. In my opinion, I would rather actually color myself, but you get actually a little bit more of dynamic range that way. And sometimes it actually looks very beautiful, but there are times where I don't really like the coloring. So I would say try it out and see for yourself if you like it. But it's definitely good to have it here. Well, to be honest, this has beautiful footage. Beautiful, sharp footage. But there is a downside. They did not include any log profiles. The only profiles that you have on here are the normal or the Cinelike D. It is not a problem for me because that is what I used to actually shoot and edit in when using the Mavic Pro 1. But here, if I wanted to put in a log, well, there is no option for that. If Cinelike D is enough for you, like it is for me, then this drone is pretty much the best you can get in that category. And last but not least, you get the quick shots. In this drone, the quick shots are actually very cool. You have all the quick shots from the other drones, and I didn't really have them before, not all of them. And thanks to this, I feel like it's very cool. It's not as gimmicky. Maybe the ASTEROID is a little bit gimmicky, but it's a very cool thing to show someone that doesn't really know much about drones, or maybe just like looks at the footage and you're showing them. It is something very crazy to look at. It makes like this small planet pretty much. It's a very cool effect, but the other ones you can actually use in very nice ways. For example, if you want to have yourself be the subject and you don't have someone to help you get the shots, or maybe you want to do a different kind of shot where you want it to be recorded with the drone, well, this is the way to go. You have things like the circling around, tracking, or maybe if you want a helix, you can actually get that too. I actually tried the tracking on my mom while riding the bike. You have to time it nicely so that the person doesn't get too far away too fast because it's not going to track. But once you get it to work, it is a very cool way to track someone. But knowing me, I'm gonna get all my shots pretty much handheld because I like to use my experience alone to get better shots than if I use quick shots. But it's a very cool thing to have if you need it. And last but not least, something they were advertising with this drone is the 8K hyperlapse. And sorry, I'm not gonna be actually showing you any 8K hyperlapse because I haven't done any. Why? Well, first off, you need a lot of time, but that is not a problem. From what I saw, the 8K hyperlapse are not too smooth right now. So instead I did a full HD hyperlapse to see how it works, and you have different modes. You can have like the waypoints, you can actually set a point on the map, or it's like the camera where you want it to be focused on. Or for example, for me, I put it on like a hill, on a mount, and actually put it where it has to go. So it was going straight, but it was turning to face the mount. So it is very cool, and I will use it definitely in the future, but I'm waiting for one update. Instead of having full HD and 8K, which isn't as smooth, and because you have to have 6-second intervals between the shots, how about we do a 4K? It would be a great update, and I think they're gonna actually add it in a software update later down the line. If you're into that kind of stuff, I think it's gonna be great. Even the full HD hyperlapse looks very cool, very unique. And there is one last thing that comes with this drone, is the changing of the app. The DJI Go 4, but now you actually go to the DJI Fly app. And my experience so far has been, it's very good. There's a couple things that I wish were the same, like the battery percentage on the top, like the line. Instead you have the minutes on the top and like the percentage of the battery, but other than that, the app works great. So it's a very good app, and it is a difference if you're coming from a different drone. So that's gonna be it for this review. If you want to edit and see the footage for yourself, there's gonna be a link down below for you to download. So that's gonna be it for today, but before we end this video, a couple things that I wanted to mention very quickly. First off, if you like the music in this video or in any other of my work, check out Epidemic Sound, it's gonna be linked down below. And if you choose to sign up through that link, you'll get 30 days free. And if you become a paying subscriber, well, there's gonna be a kickback for me. Second off, if you want to support this channel, check out my Patreon and my website. If you've become a patron, well, there's things coming back your way. We send out monthly postcards from the places that we visit. Some of them are actually bought in the location, and some of them are from the photos that we took, stitched together into a postcard, 100% made by us, and then with handmade drawings on the back. And last but not least, if you want to join a travel community, check out Travel the World. It's a Facebook travel community. If you're into that kind of stuff, well, there's gonna be a link down below, and I will see you there. So, like I said, it's gonna be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video once again, and I will see you next time.